For these reasons and more, I'm hugely privileged to be here. Now, we stand at a defining moment in our history. The accelerated forces of change and the breathtaking technological advances are shifting the foundations of communities, societies, politics, and leadership. It will be the nations that understand this and harness a new understanding of leadership that succeed and thrive. Those that don't will be in extremely big trouble. The fundamental ingredient in the creation of a happy, peaceful, and prosperous nation is the laying of the foundation for sustainable development. Overcoming the prejudices of prosperity and basic human living conditions is a significant national challenge and international responsibility. What we must address today is how leadership must change in order to harness that change. We must also refocus on ensuring that underserved segments of society are given opportunity to grow and become vibrant parts of a nation's progress. Now let's consider for a moment today's political system. They are structures created as a result of the vestiges of either the Cold War, communism versus capitalism, or some other legacy of the past. They certainly do not represent today's reality. This is why our elections are fought on the past. I'm yet to see an election, even here in Sri Lanka, that is fought on the future. This is why our politicians can cross parties with gay abandon and not worry too much about it. Our political parties have ceased to represent the people's interests. They are organizations that were set up at a different time in history with a different purpose. And they attract people who contest for positions of authority. There is a vital difference between leadership and authority. And understanding the difference is the key to defining a role of leading a nation and its governance. We continuously appoint people into positions of authority and expect them to lead. And this is why we're continuously disappointed with our leaders. It's time that we reimagine leadership. Let's consider one example, technology. The speed at which technology evolves is several multiples of a government's ability to create policies to manage that change. For instance, by the time a government can come up with policies and governance structure to manage a certain technological advancement, that very innovation has already outstripped itself with several newer versions. Outside of regulation, governments will cease to have a role in technological innovation. For instance, I'm yet to see a political party in Sri Lanka that has unveiled its strategy to manage the impact of artificial intelligence on the Sri Lankan job market. Let me repeat that. I am yet to see a Sri Lankan political party that has articulated its position on the impact of artificial intelligence on the future of the Sri Lankan job market. What is the government's stance on robotics? How will it impact some of our largest industries? What will we do if much of what brings us most of our foreign exchange today disappears tomorrow? Has any political party in Sri Lanka reimagined the labor market itself? For instance, should we not focus on coming up with solutions to manage emerging labor trends? Businesses will require the flexibility to retrench and refit. This could mean mass layoffs. Governments must then focus on providing safety nets to individuals as opposed to safeguarding employment. It will be totally untenable for a government to keep insisting that businesses retain workers when the nature of the activity itself will change rapidly. But if there is no safety net for the individual to be reskilled and kept relevant, then the person will face terrible consequences. The government of Denmark, for instance, has introduced a scheme they called flexicurity, a model that is a combination of labor market flexibility in a dynamic economy and labor security. Do our leaders understand what's coming? I'm also yet to see a political party that will shift its focus to sustainable rural development as opposed to massive infrastructure development. We talk a lot about public-private partnerships today, but what does that really mean to the people? Very little, unless it gives growth opportunity to the basic unit that makes up our nation, the village. Public-private partnerships must focus on rural development. Building hospitals and schools, for instance, and it is an undisputable fact that significant success can be achieved even with our meager resources if we use better, strategically directed approaches. So how will all of this change the kind of political leader who will emerge and succeed in the future? Well, for starters, they must be intimately connected to the people. In fact, they must even be funded by the people and completely divorced of big money. Politicians must be made to depend on small, transparent contributions made by the people themselves. This will force a candidate to remain deeply connected to his or her electorate. Today, big money means that politicians are not required to remain connected to the very people who vote for them. The politician who understands this and changes will succeed. The others will fail. This new paradigm of leadership is upon us, and the examples are all around us. If you consider the great swathe of space between West Africa, let's say Liberia, and Somalia, other nations like Syria and Iraq, for instance, over 1 billion people in the world we live in live within dysfunctional governments. And switch on the news if you want to see what that's like. So my suggestion really is that we should be moving far to the left as far as our political representation is concerned, make it totally conservative and deeply connected to the people, but move far to the right as far as our economy and governance structures are concerned. Governments should really withdraw from any area in which they are not adding any critical value. I know this is a big statement, but the role of government leadership in the future is going to be highly concentrated. If we are going to consider the importance of reimagining the future, we might perhaps get some inspiration from her past. Just look at her stupendous performance and achievements of centuries ago. Consider what our kings built: Anuradhapura, Colombo, kingdoms that rival the world's greatest civilizations. Our leaders were able to achieve this because they understood the importance of Sri Lanka's geopolitical position and made use of it. They led creatively. They opened themselves up and the nation to the world. And they looked outward as much as they did inward. Sri Lanka was the world's emporium. In the case of Anuradhapura, in fact, it may come as a surprise to learn that an entire Greek enclave lived in a dedicated quarter designed by King Pandukabhe. This is not what I'm saying, it's in the Mahavamsa. Sri Lanka's heart resides in her villages. And just like a doctor whose work begins with the diagnosis of the heartbeat, the planning and execution of any policy of our nation must begin with the learnings derived from her villages. Let's consider our amazing ancient irrigation system for one moment. The village cascade system, this incredible labyrinth of tanks and canals focused around a cluster of villages, sustained our forefathers for thousands of years. Remember, they went into a state of dysfunction only in the past few centuries. Before that, the village cascade system didn't just feed our people, but they made us strong and prosperous. Our ancient engineers designed irrigation systems that were innovative and sustainable. They designed a system of tanks, each with a specific purpose. One for animals, another for people, another for farming, another for storage. This harmonious system worked in unison to sustain a cluster of villages, and it worked. Today, we have abandoned this traditional wisdom. Our tanks are raped each day by provincial councils that renovate and repair without any concern for the intelligence, love and care with which they were created. Today, our water management projects are focused on taking water from one province to another, devastating communities in between. Our reality today is massive flooding today and devastating droughts tomorrow. Ideas and innovations are no longer geographically or politically confined. The rapid pace and convergence of technology is restructuring how we find solutions to some of these problems. The seamless flow of information and, in fact, people means that local and regional issues will invariably gain global prominence and can rapidly mutate into international problems if left unaddressed. This is why bridging the gap between yesterday's methods and the problems of the future is so very vital. This is why we must reimagine leadership. Political structures of the 20th century do not hold much promise for the challenges of the 21st century. What worked yesterday will have difficulty in succeeding today and most certainly will fail tomorrow. The vertical growth of economies has already failed to expand horizontally to cover a massive spectrum of people. And despite the beneficial tools that should make their lives easier, they live in the unseen shadows of deprivation. In Sri Lanka today, 24 of our 25 districts struggle with problems associated with a lack of water. This in a nation in which 106 beautiful rivers flow out into the ocean. And what about perhaps our greatest gift? I'm sure Ms. Vakistarachi will speak a lot more about it. Our ocean. When we think about Sri Lanka, we often think about the 65,610 square kilometers that make up our island. But we forget about the 517,000 square kilometers of open ocean that is ours as well. Our exclusive economic zone, it's ours. The right to explore, exploit, and extract. Few nations on earth have been bestowed with a gift 8 times the size of her landmass. These challenges are why institutes such as the BCIS is so critically important. You must continue to churn out Sri Lankan leaders who not just have the capacity and the skills to grapple with these challenges, but also have the audacity to reimagine the destiny of our nation. This is why we need our best and brightest representing our nation as her ambassadors and diplomats, and not appointments based on political imperatives. What a travesty we commit to ourselves and our own future if we do not have the courage to make these choices today. Yes, we stand at a defining moment in our history. We hold in our hands our own destinies. We can decide today if we continue to leave it in the hands of a hopelessly corrupt, archaic, decaying system, a system that is rooted in yesterday, or if we will reimagine leadership, take on the world with courage and determination, and build a new, strong, vibrant nation. The choice is ours. Thank you.